When a stock is reaching all-time highs, trading them and looking for targets might be a little tricky, but in this video, I'm going to go over how I approach these setups. What's going on, guys? It's Christian from Stock Hours, and today we're going to be talking about how I approach different setups when a stock is reaching all-time highs or has already broke. So obviously, it's going to be harder to find certain key levels to play because these are all brand new untested levels. But by the end of this video, I'll show you guys how I look for different setups at all-time highs and how I kind of adjust my targets on these trades, since there's no real previous price action telling you a certain key level might be a target. So the first thing that I look for in certain entries is going to be if a setup has tested multiple times, then that's typically the bigger breakout trades than if it's just a continuation setup. So I'll kind of tell you what I mean here. So for example, just looking at the chart, this right here is going to be something that was set up multiple times. So the reason for that is because you have multiple tests before we ended up breaking out, versus a setup like let's see, let's go to like that, for example. It was really just one high and then you're playing the next high the next day, or the same high the next day. Obviously, versus this one took a couple tests before it eventually broke out. So something like this, I typically put more weight into a setup like this than something like this. Not saying that this wouldn't be something you can't trade, but you would like to see that the stock is stronger than the market and has good momentum when it's not really set up as long. So here would be another example of a setup that was kind of going at it for a while. It did break during earnings, the specific one, but let's say we're just looking at the chart like this. Then this 745, 746 level would definitely be something I would have taken. But you can see that we put in a high and then we keep rejecting around that same area. So imagine that we open up here the next day and then push into it very strong with divergence against the market, high volume, and everything like that. Then this setup would be pretty good and it would be something I would definitely be willing to take. So if on the bigger time frames you have something that's setting up a little bit more, then those are definitely going to be some setups that you would like to consider taking at all-time highs, especially. The specific setups or patterns that I look at could be double tops, could be consolidation breaks, could be a bull flag, could be like an inverse H, all on bigger time frames at the highs, because those are typically where you might get a bigger move. But now if I am looking at a continuation trade, so let's say after this broke out, let's say up here on Friday of last week, that would be more of just a continuation trade because it's not really something that has set up for too long. There's no real clear key level. You can just look at pre-market highs. So that was the initial pre-market high, and I think it did break before. Let me see. Yeah, right before open it broke again. So that would be probably the new entry on something like that, since it already broke. And for something like this, just getting in around that high, I'm personally not looking for too much on these continuation plays, just because since it's not set up as long, it typically doesn't have as much room as something like this, for example. Obviously, yes, it did break by a good amount, but you're much better off looking for the high probability target than looking for the home run trade. You'll probably do way better in the long run catching 10 highly probable targets than looking for just one home run trade. So for something like this, I just targeted really the 810 break. So I sold around here very quickly. Obviously, it pushed up a lot farther. You could have maybe held runners to a bigger target, but it being all-time highs and something that wasn't really set up that much, I wasn't really looking for too much. So that's also something to keep in mind. So when I'm looking for entries, that's basically what I'm looking for. Hopefully something sets up. If not, I would have to see strong momentum past a previous day high or a um, pre-market high. Really, any clear pivot levels. Um, so that's what I'm looking for on entries at all-time highs. Now, for profit targets, it's going to be much different than your typical trade because these are all basically untested levels. You're not going to have previous price action telling you to target this specific number because of past consolidation or past pivot levels, anything like that. So, the first thing that you should look for is going to be trend lines. I go throughout all the different time frames to find which trend lines are going to be something that I would want to look at. But for example, this is something that I drew out um, obviously before I started the video. It's just this trend line going up here. So something you want to look for on trend lines is going to be multiple tests, which kind of validates the validity of the trend. So the algo had it drawn from here. So you do have a couple tests which are good. So it would be one for the algo, 1, 2, 3, and then obviously right here it rejected again. But I drew mine a little bit differently, so it had more tests. That's why I thought mine was maybe a little bit better. But they're both going to be something you want to look out for. Oops. So typically on trend lines, if you have 3 touches or more, that's where it's really good, in my opinion. It's something you definitely want to keep in mind, and want to maybe target or watch price action at the trend to make sure it'll not reject. But typically 3 or more tests is what I'm looking for in trends. So like I said, again, go through the different time frames. And another thing, so let's say we come back up to this high, the farther out we go, so basically the longer it takes, the higher this trend target would be. So if this happens tomorrow, I would be targeting maybe the 840 break. It's still a really big move, but that would be like the maximum room I would have for the day. But if it happens like next week or whatever, it can go, all the way up to like 900. So that's something to keep in mind with trends, is that they're moving over time depending how steep the trend is, especially. For the next target on any all-time high breaks are going to be key psychological levels. So let's say we're trading this high up here. Let me come down to a smaller time frame. So let's say we're trading the 824 break. 825 is going to be a big psychological level, and then the next one is really going to be 830. So those are going to be 2 big levels to watch out for when you're trading all-time highs, is really any big psychological level. So any $5 or $10 increments, even every $1 increment could be a decent psychological level that you're going to want to look out for profit targets or potential reversals. Another big thing to keep in mind, this is something that is not going to be so obvious if you're new to trading, but let's say you've traded for a year or so and you trade basically the same tickers all the time, you're going to know generally what the average move on a specific stock is. So for example, Nvidia, it can break this high by a couple dollars, so it can break to 830. That's a big move, but it could definitely break to 825, which is a $1 move. That's definitely not out of the ordinary and highly probable. But now when you come to a stock like maybe let me see what's cheap, let's say AMD or Apple, those typically won't have that big of moves on average. So let's open up Apple. We're actually not even at highs, but for Apple to move, for example, $2 or $3 is gonna be much harder than for Nvidia to move by like $2 or $3. So it's going to be important to know the stock you're trading and what the expected average move is going to be. So let's say we have a $10 push into this high. For me personally, I would wait for a pullback because typically Nvidia won't have a $15 straight move. That's highly unlikely. Will it happen? Yes, it happens. It happened on Friday here, but it's not the probable move. So if it's like a $2 push into this high, that's a much different approach, and it would have much more room after it breaks this level. So you have to consider the move that is capable for your given stock, and then judge your profit target based off that. And then the very last thing that I put a lot of weight on in really any break, but especially all-time high breaks, is going to be momentum. So all of these profit targets are kind of estimates of where the stock might start to slow down or turn around, but the real gauge of all these profit targets is going to be momentum at those specific levels. So whether it's the trend line, whether it's a psychological level, whether it's what you think the stock might hit because of the average capable move of the stock, all of these are going to be judged based off of momentum. So once you see momentum start to slow down at one of those targets, is going to be where you want to start taking profits or get out of your position. Get out of your position entirely. So that's basically how I approach these all-time high breaks. For me, it's easy because there's not much resistance past these highs, but you do need to keep in mind the potential resistances that it could have, being the trend lines, being the psychological levels, being the average capable moves. So Nvidia is not going to have a $50 straight move with no pullback. So you have to be patient and wait for those bounces before your entries to have a highly probable green trade. But hopefully you guys like this video. If you have any questions about how to trade all-time highs, or any questions in general, make sure you leave it in the comment section below. We answer all the questions. And if you guys are interested, every Wednesday we have a free day in Stock Hours Discord. So we go over our live trading, our trade ideas. We have lessons at night where you can ask us as many questions as you want. All very profitable traders here to help you guys. So hopefully you guys like the video. If you like it, make sure you leave a like down below and subscribe. See you guys soon. Peace.